Yeah, so it's really great. But out of tea ceremony becomes so much art and aesthetic lesson, as well as, in effect, a way to live. And tea, just like the garden, emphasizes engagement of all of our senses, just like the garden does. Really, the two are hand in hand. There's a term, mono no aware, which states loosely that the awareness that the transience of all things heightens appreciation of their beauty. And when I heard that from the first time, I knew it. It's like, I know that, because there's a kind of like they say, like a sort of a gentle sadness with the passing of a wildflower, because it comes up, it's so beautiful for a while, and then it quickly fades away. And there's a kind of sadness in that, a kind of melancholy. But it's one big cycle that keeps on moving. But just I really, when I learned about this from Sadafumi Uchiyama, who's the curator of the Portland Japanese Garden, and just a brilliant guy, and has done an amazing job with what they've done out there. And I heard him do a lecture on this, and I thought, that's it. I knew it, but I didn't have a word for it. And so I love that term. And so this endless flow of time, gradual transition of the seasons, continually, all the time, forever. From the spring ephemerals, and a little later with the azaleas and rhododendrons. Not long after the crab apples and red buds, you can see a red bud coming in there. Again, look at all that leaning in. The lean right here. And then late May, early June, still some rhododendron and of course the irises. Time is moving along, and that's in the Japanese garden. It's not just a mass array of flowers all the time. They come and they go. They mark the passage of time. In the summer, not a lot of flowers. We're actually introducing more little bits of astilbe and other things here and there, just to create just a little more of a natural feeling, a little more interest, and also to benefit pollinators. We've done a lot of work with pollinators in the garden. And then, of course, fall. And this is a great area to see the cohesiveness of the leaning trees. Look at just the slight curve in that trunk. Slight curve, all working together. And then the early dustings of snow in sometimes October. Usually something in October or something. Well, let's see, a little further north here, maybe a little earlier, I don't know. But and then, of course, the fullness of winter, and the whole cycle starts over. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all and seeing this amazing art collection in this incredible place. And I hope that you can come down to Rockford to see the garden. The garden is marvelous in fall, and usually I say colors start in late September, and then by mid-October it is right on, and it's a pretty electric place. So I want to thank you all so much for being here.
Are there any, we'd like to do two things here. This has been a wonderful digital journey to the gardens. And Tim and I talked earlier that we would like to join hands, the warehouse and the gardens. If any of you would like to visit the gardens, we have half-price tickets. Sign up with Christine Anderson as you leave, and we can make half-price tickets available to you. That's in conjunction with the Anderson. Are there any questions, Q&A at this point? Anyone? Yes.
How do you balance guests that have mobility problems with most of what you were showing? I could see some difficulties there. How do you make it available?
So the question is, how do we make the garden available to guests with mobility issues? And we're doing the best we can. The old part of the garden was built as a private, essentially as a private residence. There were no rules on ADA or anything at that point. So what we do on that old part of the garden is we have what we call a flat tour. And essentially we tell people, if you run into a step, don't go there. You go the other direction. And so there is an area we can get wheelchairs all the way around to that Pebble Beach, wheelchairs and walkers. And then what we've also been doing in the garden over the last 3 years, we've had a plan called Walkways for Everyone, where big parts of the garden reflection, which is built more for large groups and so forth, but we've paved, I should know how many square feet or lineal feet, but it's quite a lot. There must be a third of a mile or something of paved paths. So everywhere where the paths were soft because of continual rain washouts and so forth, we've paved it. And so that has been a huge benefit to people in wheelchairs, walkers, mobility issues in general. So we're doing all we can to make it authentic and functional for everyone. Thank you for that question.
I'd like to know about the maintenance of your stone gardens, and if you wouldn't mind how they're put together.
So maintenance of the stone gardens and how they're put together. First of all, how they're put together. Generally, the gravel is about 4 inches thick, because that way you can get any topographical issues or anything. Usually we excavate down, sometimes put down compacted stone underneath it all to get a nice stable base, and then put a layer of landscape fabric, like the heavy stuff, not the Menard stuff, but like road fabric is the best. The heavy duty, non-woven geotextile, but heavy, and then put the gravel on top of that. And what we've gone to now is the little 1/4-inch grade, the grade stuff that we used to use. It's not available in our area anymore. And so we've gone in some of the areas you're seeing. Essentially, it comes from like feed stores. It's crushed granite that they use for growing turkeys and chickens. They need that for their gizzard. And I don't know exactly how that works, but it apparently does. And you can get that at feed stores, and we just buy it occasionally by the truckload when we're building something. And so typically 4 inches of that at least. And with the chunkier stuff, we make it deeper because the rake that you use to rake it has tines that are 2 inches deep. And so you're digging in. It's a physical workout, because you have to dig in with that rake and push those tines down in there. So as far as once you've got it built, the smaller stuff is much easier to rake. And we've got it everywhere from 1/4-inch chips to 3/4-inch chips, 5/8 and 3/4. And so if you're going to do something like that in your own space, go small, and it's easier to rake. Some of it you can rake, the small chips you can rake with a leaf, just like a metal leaf rake, with every other time removed. But you can play around with that for how distinctive you might like the pattern or whatever. And then, the heavier stuff, sometimes we haven't done it, but some gardens will put a weight on top of the rake to help it dig down in. So raking it is another thing. And like the inner garden of the guest house with that raked gravel, that's fine pebbles. I like to use the every other time remove sprung steel, leaf rake, Ace Hardware, $11. And, basically, whatever pattern you're doing, you just, you find a way to work your way through it so that you don't have to walk over it. Or you tiptoe around the edges and walk on rocks, or you break your way out, in effect. So if you do that like that checkerboard type pattern, then you have to break around the rocks to smooth it all out and make it a nice transition. And then you just start at one side and tiptoe along the edges of the rock, and then wherever your footprints are, you cover that with your last raking. So I think check on the internet. Check on the internet, because I think I did a raking demo, and they taped it, and I think we YouTubed it. So if you look at the Anderson Gardens, and I'm not a social media guy, so I can't tell you, but go to I know the garden has a YouTube channel, and some of those videos are on there. And they actually talk a lot about these principles of garden design, as well as they do a raking demo.
Are you using blowers in the garden to keep the debris out?
Yeah, it's almost a must. You almost have to use blowers in the garden. They clean things up really fast, and we don't have an army of people out there. So yeah, you blow carefully with, now we're using these little electric ones. So, like when we do the rake gravel, you clean it all off first. You get it nice and clean, and then you rake. So clean is good, and then I'll also tell you something, too clean is not so good. So start out clean, make it real nice, and then, maybe you might go over and, like in the fall, you might tap on the branch, and a few leaves flutter down. And you know how you saw, there's some pictures in there of the rhododendron when they drop their petals, and there's like this pool of rhododendron flowers on the ground below the plant. That's one of my favorite times of the year. It's like a pool of color below the plant. And you can do that too in great gravel gardens, just by maybe tapping a branch that has nice colorful leaves. And however they flutter down in there and the way they do is perfect. Yes, sir?
Are you open year-round?
We are not open year-round. You can see by the difficulty of some of the passage through there that winter would be a liability nightmare. So we open typically about the middle of April, and then we'll go as long into November as we can. I think last year we made it to something like the 12th of November. Yeah, and then the restaurant has been open, well, last year was so weird, but they're talking about maybe the restaurant being open all year, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, so, I suppose if we were in St. Louis, we could be open year-round, but in Rockford, you know how it is. It's tough to keep the paths safe and also keep those waterfalls running in the winter. There's all kinds of irrigation and everything that needs to be cleared out. So we're really a 6-7 month garden.
Is there, I can't imagine that you're not dreaming of your next project. Any hints for the rest of us, or is that not?
There are some dreams. There's a deck in the garden reflection that we'd love to build a pavilion in place of that deck that sits out over the water. Really, right now, my dreams are more or less making everything that we have better. And you build a garden, and then 4 years later, stuff's falling apart. So if we were to come to the garden right now, you'd see that there's a small gate. It's built by the Japanese woodworkers. It's a beautiful, rustic, small gate, but the post spaces were rotting. So we completely took it apart, every piece of it. I had a woodworker here, he just left yesterday. He was here for 3 weeks and cut the rod off, used a cross tenon and put new pieces of wood on the bottom. And now instead of being set in concrete, which they were originally, now the posts are sitting on top of rocks. And there's a rod that goes up through all of it and bolted it down. So sitting on the rock, it won't rot anymore. And so what we're doing now, again, there was never the vision in the early days of this being what it is. It was a backyard thing that just kept getting more and more and more, and then all of a sudden it's a public garden. And so now when we do anything, we try to make it, 75 to 100 year kind of longevity. So Yeah, there are other projects. We want to work on water clarity. There's the potential to develop the site above the garden, but it's got some real grade challenges and maybe get people up and down. So, yeah, there's been some talk of some big things, but so far nothing has broke out. Just a lot of repair projects.
I'm just wondering if you have problems with what we call invasive species?
Yeah, invasive species, we actually probably grow some invasive species in the garden, sadly, like burning bush, and, we're saddled with all these great old burning bush in there that have been pruned for 40 years. Some of them are fantastic specimens, so, and I can't say go out and plant burning bush, but, we have some, and, but yeah, I mean, in the woods around the garden, there's buckthorn and honeysuckle like crazy, and we've been working on those. We're trying to keep those at bay. So we're doing all we can on that. There was a question over there somewhere? Yeah.
Yeah, do you have any problems getting permits to modify the street bed?
In the Spring Creek, so far, the Corps of Engineering has been pretty tolerant of our work down there. Yeah, so, putting in the bridges, it was all permitted and it all worked. The flood line has changed a little bit. It's gotten wider than it used to be, so, the future might be a little more difficult, but, so far so good. We've been able to do everything that we needed to do without getting in trouble. So good. Well, thank you so much again, everybody, for coming out here. It's been a pleasure.
Remember, it's a 90-minute trip to Rockford. It's a much better, more beautiful drive there than going to Chicago. Remember, if you're interested in half-price tickets, talk to Christine Anderson. You saw Japanese drummers in one of these pictures. On the 27th of this month, we're going to have a troupe of Japanese drummers here at the warehouse. Sign up for that as well. Thank you very much for coming.
I'll set these on the table out here too if anybody wants, and it's got a little bit of information about the garden.
Okay.